Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Yashodanandana Pradjana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Pradjana Ranjana. Jamuna Tira Vanachari. Jamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jai Om Viṣṇupād Paramahansa. For the Acharya Ashtottara that Sri Srimad His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Prabhupada ki Jai. ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Jai Om Viṣṇupād Paramahansa. For the Acharya Ashtottara that Sri Srimad His Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur ki Jai. Ananda Koti Vaishnava ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur ki Jai. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki Jai. Samaveda Bhaktabinda ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glory to Sri Guru and Gauranga. Narayanam Namaskritya Narang Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudire. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is our very means of conquest, we should offer our respectful obeisances unto Lord Narayan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, unto Narayan Rishi, the supermost human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the Goddess of Learning, unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author, and unto Srila Prabhupada, the translator, commentator, and our spiritual master. Nashtaprayesha Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavatyuttama shloke Bhakti bhavati naishtiki. By regular attendance in classes on Srimad Bhagavatam, and by rendering devotional service to the pure devotee, all that is inauspicious within the heart is destroyed almost to nil. And loving devotion to the Supreme Lord, who is glorified in transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So on this 12th day of December 2022 in San Diego, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. We are in Canto 6, Chapter 3, text number 6. But before we read that, we will read the introduction, which we never did. This was written by Srila Prabhupada. It's dictated by him. As related in this chapter, the Yamadutas approached Yamarāja, who very exhaustively explained Bhagavat Dharma, the religious principle of devotional service. Yamarāja thus satisfied the Yamadutas, who had been very disappointed. Yamarāja said, although Ajāmila was calling for his son, he chanted the holy name of the Lord, Narayan, and simply by a glimpse of the chanting of the holy name, he immediately achieved the association of Lord Vishnu's order carriers, who saved him from your attempt to arrest him. This is quite all right. It is a fact that even a chronically sinful person who chants the holy name of the Lord, although not completely without offenses, does not take another material birth. Close quote. By chanting the holy name of the Lord, Ajāmila had met 4 order carriers of Lord Vishnu. They were very beautiful and had quickly come to rescue him. Yamarāja now described them. Quote, the Viṣṇudūtas are all pure devotees of the Lord, the Supreme Person, in regard to the creation, maintenance, and annihilation of this cosmic manifestation. Neither King Indra, Varuna, Shiva, Brahma, the 7 rishis, nor I myself can understand the transcendental activities of the Supreme Lord, who is self-sufficient and beyond the reach of the material senses. With material senses, no one can attain enlightenment about him. The Lord, the master of the illusory energy, possesses transcendental qualities for the good fortune of everyone, and his devotees are also qualified in that way. The devotees, concerned only with rescuing the fallen souls from this material world, apparently take birth in different places in the material world just to save the conditioned souls. If one is somewhat interested in spiritual life, the devotees of the Lord protect him in many ways. Close quote. Open quote. Yamarāja continued. The essence of Sanatana Dharma, or eternal religion, is extremely confidential. No one but the Lord himself can deliver that confidential religious system to human society. It is by the mercy of the Lord that the transcendental system of religion can be understood by his pure devotees, and specifically by the 12 Mahajans, Lord Brahma, Narada Muni, Lord Shiva, the 4 Kumaras, Kapila, Manu, Prahlāda, Janaka, Bhishma, Bali, Shukadeva Goswami, and me. Other learned scholars, headed by Jaimini, are almost always covered by the illusory energy, and therefore they are more or less attracted by the flowery language of the 3 Vedas, namely Rig, Yajur, and Sama, which are called Trayi. Instead of becoming pure devotees, people captivated by the flowery words of these 3 Vedas are interested in the Vedic ritualistic ceremonies. They cannot understand the glories of chanting the holy name of the Lord. Intelligent persons, however, take to the devotional service of the Lord. When they chant the holy name of the Lord without offenses, they are no longer subject to my rulings. If by chance they commit some sinful act, they are protected by the holy name of the Lord, because that is where their interest lies. The 4 weapons of the Lord, especially the club and the Sudarshan Chakra, always protect the devotees. One who chants, hears, or remembers the holy name of the Lord without duplicity, or who prays or offers obeisances to the Lord, becomes perfect, whereas even a learned person may be called to hell if he is bereft of devotional service. Close quote. After Yamarāja thus described the glories of the Lord and his devotees, Shukadeva Goswami further explained the potency of chanting the holy name and the futility of performing Vedic ritualistic ceremonies and pious activities for atonement. Okay, now we will chant text number 6. Just give me a second here to go to it. Okay. Kintu Shastra Bahutve Syad Bahunam Iha Karmanyam Shastritvam Upacharo Hi Yata Mandalavartinam Kintu Shastra Bahutve Syad Bahunam Iha Karminam Shastritvam Upacharo Hi Yata Mandalavartinam Kintu Shastra Bahutve Syad Bahunam Iha Karminam Shastritvam Upacharo Hi Yata Mandalavartinam Kintu Shastra Bahutve Syad Bahunam Iha Karminam Shastritvam Upacharo Hi Yata Mandalavartinam. Go ahead. Oh. Yeah. Take from him. Take from him. Kintu Shastra Bahutve Syad Bahunam Iha Karminam Shastritvam Upacharo Hi Yata Mandalavartinam. Dharma. Kintu Shastra Bahutve Syad Bahunam Iha Karminam Shastritvam Upacharo Hi Yata Mandalavartinam. Next. Go ahead. Kintu Shastra Bahutve Syad Bahunam Iha Karminam Shastritvam Upacharo Hi Yata Mandalavartinam. Who's next? Kintu Shastra Bahutve Syad Bahunam Iha Karminam Shastritvam Upacharo Hi Yata Mandalavartinam. One more. Kintu Shastra Bahutve Syad Bahunam Iha Karminam Shastritvam Upacharo Hi Yata Mandalavartinam. Kintu, but Shastra of governors or judges, Bahutve in the plurality, Syat there may be, Bahunam of many, Iha in this world, Karminam persons performing actions, Shastritvam departmental management, Upacharaha administration, He indeed, Yata just like, Mandalavartinam of the departmental heads. Translation. The Yamadutas continued. Since there are many different karmis or workers, there may be different judges or rulers to give them justice. But just as one central emperor controls different departmental rulers, there must be one supreme controller to guide all the judges. Purport. In governmental management, there may be departmental officials to give justice to different persons. But the law must be one, and that central law must control everyone. The Yamadutas could not imagine that two judges would give two different verdicts in the same case. And therefore, they wanted to know who the central judge is. The Yamadutas were certain that Ajāmila was a most sinful man. But although Yamarāja wanted to punish him, the Viṣṇudūtas excused him. This was a puzzling situation that the Yamadutas wanted Yamarāja to clarify. Om Jnana Timirandasya Gyan Anjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmidatam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkest of ignorance, but my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisance unto him and all members of Shri Parampara. So this whole conversation between the Yamadutas and Yamarāja deals with a very important point. And that is, who is the supreme judge of what is right and what is wrong? And the implication is, and who determines the proportional punishments according to the severity of the infraction of the laws, moral laws, whatever. So that's a big part of what it means to say that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He is the Supreme, as will be described by Yamarāja, Dharmam tu Sakshat Bhagavat Pranitam. These very important instructions come in there, plus the list of the 12 Mahajans is going to be spoken here, so it is a very significant chapter. But that phrase Prabhupada would often quote, how do we know what is the right thing to do? And do we have full confidence that if someone observes the right thing to do and acts properly, he'll be properly rewarded? And if someone violates that, then he'll be properly punished. This is the universal justice system. Now, in the modern day, there is the idea of the authority of God, but there's no real understanding how that works. And I think that most people, even if they're religious, don't feel that that's being observed today very, very much, and that the enforcement program is going on. Because there's so many demons who seem to be flourishing. That's the first thing. Obviously evil people who are just, you know, crazy people who go into somewhere and start shooting up someplace just out of, you know, some madness. How did that happen? How come that person wasn't restricted or punished before to go that? And after they do it, what happens? They get arrested. They may get a long trial and so forth. It doesn't. In other words, there doesn't seem to be a very accurate or just system in the world. And of course, in human society, they try to create one. Right? We have various judges and courts and police who are arresting and so forth. But that's also kind of, you know, not very confidence building, so to speak. You have corrupt, you know, you had this scene, what was it, last year, 2021, or was it 2020, where you had all those riots. I mean, they had demonstrations right here. That black guy had been killed by people. And the only reason why that created such a furor, because somebody took a video of it. There are so many horrible things that go on, but that people don't know about it because they don't see the visceral thing. But because that video was taken, and it was obviously a horrific infraction, it was a tremendous crime by the policeman. And it's the same idea. The policemen, the judges, they're supposed to enforce things. So when that in society, as we have today, people don't really have faith in the justice system, and the judges are being bought off, which is mentioned in the 12th canto, that if you want to get justice, you have to pay off the judges. That's actually a symptom of Kali Yuga. So it creates a tremendous amount of distress and anxiety in society. For those people who want to try to do the right thing and live a peaceful life, it's very difficult to feel confident that they can really do that in a society where there are various factions who are out of control. They don't seem to be being punished. The government itself contains, is proven over time, various corrupt officials and all this stuff. So, in other words, in the Kali Yuga, this very, very important system of justice and crime and punishment is broken. And that creates a tremendous amount of distress in society. So here we see an instance of it, of a parent, and this is why the Yamadutas were so distressed. Although they're ugly and violent and frightening, they're very intelligent, and they feel that they're serving the system of justice, universal justice, with the Yamarāja. And to them, Ajāmila was a perfect candidate. He was kind of religious when he was young, but then his whole life He was a criminal. He was, he kicked out his wife. He even, gives us insight. He left his chaste wife. He ignored his old parents, who needed him for support. So many sins. He's a perfect candidate for punishment. And yet here, and they're complaining to Yamarāja, we thought you were the supreme judge. We were under the impression that when we carried out your missions, as we did so many times before, we were enforcing the just law, and the people who we took for your judgment, and we've noticed that you judged, they'd go to this hell, go to this, go to this, that this is part of the system, and we were confident. And now we don't know. It seems like this is not. And so Yamarāja is going to explain, as this whole pastime is, the glories of the holy name, especially in terms of negating sinful activities, sinful reactions, that whatever one may have done. You remember there was a whole list of it wasn't an exhaustive list, of sins that the chanting of the name can negate. It's the best counteraction of the sinful reaction for killing a Brahmin, and so many other things. It's, serious, horrible crimes against the universal justice system. So, and the wonderful thing about it is when you see it from a larger perspective, this is just the first installment of the benefits of the name. We're not chanting our rounds carefully so that we can negate the sins that we committed, hopefully, years ago or before we started chanting grievous sins. That's not the real motive of the devotees. That's understood to be a byproduct. The byproduct of the chanting is liberation. And Lord Chaitanya taught us in the Shikshastika, Nadanam Nadanam Nasundadim Kapitam Vajikadishikamiye. Now in those two lines, he's negating this whole absorption with as Prabhupada mentions in the introduction. The three Vedas and performing so many sacrifices for material benefit, to go to heaven, or maybe to get a better position on this earth. But basically, in other words, this is what people regard, as many people, as the goal of the Vedas, because so much of the Vedas deals with that karma kanda. And this is why in the beginning of the Bhagavatam, in the 5th chapter, Narada Muni comes down and he chastises Vyasadeva for writing all these other Vedas, which sure he glorified the Lord. I mean, there's Mahabharata's there, and that's Bhagavad Gita, essential knowledge, and Padma Purana has plenty about Bhakti. But did not wholly and solely glorify Bhakti as the supreme occupation and as far and away the most important thing. And did not give enough description of Krishna's glories, and especially his pastimes, that can attract the heart of the soul, and so that he doesn't even want to commit sin anymore. So the Bhagavatam itself is the final commentary on the Vedanta Sutras, which is the essence of all the wisdom. That's why Prabhupada's name, perfectly Bhakti Vedanta. Bhakti is the conclusion of all knowledge. And it talks plenty, like right here, about negating one's sinful reactions with the process of Bhakti, chiefly chanting of the holy name. All the processes of Bhakti do that, but the chanting is the most powerful, of course. But the real goal of the chanting is prema, love for Krishna. There's a beautiful verse near the end of the Krishna Karnamrita that Prabhupada would often quote, showing how what the real goal of the bhakti is. So he says, Bhaktis tvayi sthitatara bhagavan yadisyad daivedanak palati divya kishora murti mukti soyam mukulitanjali sevate sman dharmata kamakata yaksamayak patiksha. So, first of all, just to review, the 4 main pillars of arthas or goals of Vedic culture, this we should look, dharma, artha, kama, moksha. There's a progression there. This is materialistic dharma, piety, for the purpose of prosperity. Prosperity, isn't there something like prosperity theology? In the churches there. But anyway, so if you perform your duties nicely in the varnashram system, and you observe all the rituals and the functions, the Shraddha ceremony, you're a very pious person, then you'll prosper. You'll prosper. You'll be blessed with riches, What are the 4? Janmaishwarya, Shuddha, good birth, wealth, of course, beauty, high education. They come to you. And with that artha that you get, prosperity, you can buy things for kama, for satisfying your sense gratification. In a pious way, not like that. But still, even if you want to enjoy sense gratification in the mode of goodness, that's still going to bring you back for another birth, right? So the intelligent people realize, well, even though no matter how much I enjoy, even on the heavenly planets, I'm not liberated, and I still have to suffer birth and death and old age. Therefore, let me get moksha. You see, there's no mention of bhakti here. Moksha means impersonal liberation. Moksha is categorized right on the first verse of the Bhagavatam. Sridhar Swami, who's the original commentator, as one of these cheating religions. This dharma projita kaita bota. What that dharma that does not lead to bhakti is no dharma at all by the Bhagavatam. We learned that in the second chapter. Dharma savai pungsang paro dharma yato bhaktir hokshaje. Those two lines. Real dharma, the supreme dharma, is that which engenders bhakti to adhokshaja. Adhokshaja is a name for Krishna that's often used by beginners who really don't know much about Krishna. It simply means the transcendental Lord who's beyond the realm of our senses and mind. We can't see him, we can't perceive him directly, but we have faith that he's there because our acharyas told us, and therefore we perform the dharma so that we can eventually attain love for him and go back to him. And along with that comes mukti. And that's the rest of this verse. So he says, Bilvamangala is saying, if one is firmly fixed in your devotion, Bhakti Strahi Sthiratata Bhagavan, O Supreme Personality of Godhead, Bilvamangala Thakur, he was writing everything and Krishna was watching him write. He had the sense that Krishna was hearing what he said. That's why he titled this book, Krishna Karnamrita. Who can write a book like this book is called Nectar for Krishna's Ears. Well, that's pretty proud, isn't it? But Krishna was right there when he was writing. Even though he was blind, he could see with his spiritual vision, So this is a unique book. Lord Chaitanya brought it back from South India, along with Brahma Samhita. So anyway, the verse goes on. So he says, what's that fruit, palati, of this bhakti? Is it mukti? No. It's a vision of your beautiful adolescent form. In other words, you reveal the form in love, And as far as mukti goes, mukti swayam, mukti personified, is waiting at the door with the Anjali mudra. This Pushpanjali, this is a mudra that means, how can I serve you? When I was working on the Bhagavatam, we came across this difference between this, which is a kind of a way that you pray in the churches, and this, which is the way we pray. Here, you have something inside, right? Pushpa. You have the flowers, or mostly you have your heart that you're offering. But here, really the fingers are pointing at you. Please, give me health, wealth, please, There's a material motive. Just the mudras are so important. Yamarāja came up to me last night after I gave the class, and he wanted to know more about that Abhayadan mudra, which he didn't know about that. I looked it up. It's actually on Google. You can Google Abhayadan mudra. The Buddhists use it, but they have a different way. It's not this. It's just open hand like this. But anyway, it's a real thing. It's mentioned in the Brihad Bhagavatamrita. Krishna also does this. Mudras are so important, how your aspect of standing and sitting. Just like I give the example, someone comes to the temple the first time, they're checking it out. They're sitting in the back, or standing in the back is the kirtan. Not letting Krishna in, What can you show me, But this is also a mudra. Right? So anyway, so then the last part of the verse says, and as far as whatever I need from dharma, artha, and kama, because we need a little kama, prasadam, you know what I mean? That's not real kama, but the pleasure, the senses have to be satisfied. The heat, why do we put the heat in here? We can't be sitting here, performing that severe austerity. It's not when it's 43 out there. So whatever we need for that, that's understood. They're also waiting to serve me. But the real thing is your vision and love for you. So that's why we chant. But when you're first beginning devotional service, when you're coming in, this freedom from suffering is a very attractive thing. And that's why Krishna mentions in the Bhagavad Gita, the elements of knowledge, chapter 13, text 8 to 11 or 12. That's where the famous Janma, Mrityu, Jara, Vyadi, Dukkha, Darshana, Doshanam. That part of knowledge, being a human being, is to always, in the back of your mind at least, to understand the evils of birth, old age, disease, and death. And anything you're doing to help you forget that, so that you can try to enjoy, that's real adharma. That you keep this in your mind. Therefore, whatever you do, you want to be on the side of furthering your liberation. It's a good initial motivation for taking up spiritual life. And that's why Prabhupada talked about it all the time. He talked about, all the time, and Krishna talks about it in the Gita. But ultimately, we know from our literatures, from CC especially, and from the Shikshastika, that that's not our ultimate goal. The ultimate goal is prema, prema pamarta mahan. This artha, these four arthas are called dharma, artha, kama, moksha. But the panchama purushartha is prema. And it concludes all the others. Is it better to get all this wealth and beauty and be attached to it when it's obviously going to be lost? You'll either mityu sarva haraschaham. This is a really nice little mantra by Krishna. This is in the 10th chapter where he's saying, "I'm all of these things. I am death." It takes everything away. In the translation, it says, "I am all devouring death." So what is the point? What is the point of investing? Okay, we're like investors. Imagine, the big guys on Wall Street and everything. They're investing, right? With the hope of some return, so they'll enjoy, But they're complete fools. They're investing all their energy and time in trying to buy this, crypto. The whole thing crashed. Aren't you glad you didn't invest in crypto? I assume no one did here. When you only have, your Copans and your Doties, you're in much better shape than these crypto investors. Billions of dollars lost, billions. See, this is purity. He doesn't even know what crypto is. This is a currency, believe it or not. That's all. The currency that's completely ethereal. It's all online. There's no dollar bills. There's nothing. Actually, no. All you can do is invest in it and make more. They were thinking of somehow be able to use it, but you had all these guys investing in it. You had and suddenly, I invested 100 million. Now I'm worth 10 billion. The whole thing has collapsed practically, right? No. Anyway, I'm not going to get into that. But the lesson for us is that this is what the materialistic mind, in the mode of passion is that. What are you kidding? We can go to the Hare Krishna temple. What is that? We could be using our time getting online and manipulating the figures and making money. So anyway, there was a scandal. Somebody stole from it, and the whole thing is like people have lost hundreds of millions and even billions of dollars. So, but on a general level, it's always like that. Even if you're wealthy and you have your money in the bank, everything is. But what happens when you die? That's another way of losing it, because that money is attached to an account which has a name on it, and that name is the name of your body. And when your body is gone, that money, as Prabhupada said, I heard, it's there to be enjoyed by somebody else. The bank or the state or your heirs or somebody. So that's why Lord says, Nadanam. I'm not chanting Hare Krishna to get wealth. Najanam, followers. These are standard things people want. Najanam jananam nasundarim, which has two meanings. The meaning probably, or beautiful wife, Or that sundarim can go with the kavitam, which is a very beautiful knowledge, ability to write poetry and all these things, which is kind of an opulence. Va Jagadisha Kamaye. You are the Jagadish. You are the Lord of the universe. You can give me whatever you want. But I don't want this, I don't want this. And then he says, Mama Janmani, Janmani. And when he says Janmani, Janmani, birth after birth, that means, and I don't want liberation either. I don't care. Then what do you want? Mama Janmani, Janmani, Ishvare, O Lord, Bhavatad Bhakti Haituki Twahi. I simply want your unmotivated devotional service, birth after birth. I don't care if I get born again as long as I can serve your lotus feet. Famously, Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, let me be born again as an insect, as long as it's an insect on the wall of the devotee's home so I can hear the Krishna guitar. And he's serious about it. So this is way beyond this fear of birth, old age, disease, and death. Obviously, that's not a concern, ultimately. But in the beginning it is, because that's what so it serves as a very good entry point into chanting the holy name. But it's a trick. As soon as you start chanting Hare Krishna, that something else is happening. Say, oh God, I'm glad I chanted my rounds today. Now I'm protected, whatever sin I performed, We're not thinking like that. We're hoping that we can get more and more taste for the holy name. I just was sharing a verse with the Moga this morning from the Namashtaka by Rupa Goswami at the end of 8 verses, and just like the Shikshastika, they're collected maybe by him from other writings, so there's no 9th verse. Usually for the Ashtaka there's a 9th verse, which gives you the Palashuti, what you get from chanting it. So this doesn't have a 9th, but this is such a beautiful verse. He gives a sample of different names. Agadamana, Yashoda, Nandano, Nandasuno, Kamalanayana, Gopi Chandra, Vrindavanendra, Pranata Karuna, Krishna Vityaneka Swarupi, Tvai Mamadata Uchaya Vardhatam Namadeha. O holy name, you have many different varieties. Agadamana, the killer of the Aghasura demon, or the remover of sins. Yashoda Nandana, beloved son of Yashoda, Nandasunu, same as Nanda. Nandasunu, Agadamana, Yashoda, Nandano, Nanda, Kamalanayana, you of the lotus eyes, beautiful lotus eyes. Gopi Chandra, you who are like a moon, it causes the moon, moon that causes the faces of the gopis to blossom like lotuses. Vrindavanendra, Lord of Vrindavan. And here's my favorite, Pranata Karuna. Pranata Karuna means you who are most compassionate and merciful to the surrendered souls. And of course, Krishna. It's also in this verse, Krishna. Aneka Surupa, you have unlimited names, like Lord Chaitanya says, 2nd verse, 6th. So then what's the prayer? He's glorifying, what are the... Tvai Mamadata Uchai Vardhatam Namadeya. Oh, holy name, please increase my attraction for you more and more. You see? Because the name is not different from Krishna. The name is Krishna. And so praying for attraction to the name is praying for love for Krishna. That's the main prayer. There's so many prayers like that. I can, when we have a little more time, I can share some of them. Very, very beautiful, written by our acharyas. They glorify Krishna, and please give me pure love for you. So, in other words, you develop that desire from practicing sadhana bhakti. In sadhana bhakti, you're in various states of impurity, but you're following the prescribed processes for becoming purified. And in your purified state, you can perceive and relish everything about Krishna through purified eyes, through purified ears and senses, and even tasting the prasadam. The whole experience becomes one blissful thing after another, and you never become satiated. It's like with the feast is wonderful prasadam, but at a certain point, no, not even one more pakora. I can't have one. It's difficult. It's difficult to know that point, But in terms of chanting, in terms of remembering Krishna, serving the deities, there's never a satiation point. It's ever fresh. On material side, there's always a satiation point. Whatever, the drugs, the sex, whatever it may be, and plus it's harmful. Shall I chant my favorite verse again? Yehi sangsparjaja boga dukkha yonai evate adyandabantan konte anateshu ramate buddha. It's such a revolutionary verse. Krishna says, and we're working on the pleasures which are due to contact with the senses are sources of misery. Such pleasures have a beginning and an end, O Arjun, and the wise do not delight in them. In other words, there's obvious things. If you take fentanyl, you're dead, right? So we know avoid that, right? But I want the heroin, and now they're cutting it with fentanyl. So I'll risk that, because you're so much attached to whatever high you get on the heroin that you become addicted, and you're ruining your life. You're destroying your life. That's an obvious case where the pleasure results in suffering, right? But it's true of everything. You become addicted to a person, you become addicted to a place, and that addiction is part of what it means to be a human being. I like to point out, there's a verse in the 15th chapter, you may know this one. Shrotam chakshu sparshanam cha rasanam granam evacha adhishtayam anishthayam vishayam upasevate. It's not so often quoted. He's describing the process of transmigration, Lord Krishna is. And he says, it's the mind, the subtle body is carrying you, the mind, and the intelligence ego, to the next body. And according to how you've developed your consciousness, that's how body you're going to get. And you get a certain ear, eye, tongue. He mentions the 5 senses: Shrotam, Chakshu, Sparshanam, Rasanam, Granam. Adhishtayam, Anishthayam. And situated within the, this configuration of the body and the subtle body, the mind, the soul is now situated. And then, Vishayanupasevate. You engage, relish, try to enjoy a certain number of sense objects, Vishayat. You may be in a dog body, right, or a hog body, Prabhupada's favorite analogy. Then you really relish stool. I can't imagine doing that. Wait till you get in a hog body. If you act like a hog, So this word upasevate, I looked it up because I had to deal with words. I have Sanskrit dictionary. It can mean become addicted to. You become addicted to. So that goes for a human body also. Well, anything you try to enjoy, you want to do it again and again and again. It's a form of addiction, even though it may not officially be addiction. So the point is that we're going to be addicted. We got to become addicted to Krishna. There's a famous conversation. It's recorded in that Chant Be Happy book, with Prabhupada and John Lennon when he was at the estate. So they invited him into their home. They had a house there, and so he's there. He's the guru, And you can see there's a picture of Yoko and John, in the state of intoxication, and on the wall, and Prabhupada seeing. So he picked up, So they wanted to ask, well, how can we find out who's a real guru, So Prabhupada answered, you find out who's most addicted to Krishna. And it's just like that. Is that your desire for karma, for the things of the senses, have to be turned over to Krishna. Prabhupada, I'm just listening to this series, well, and those who listen to Prabhupada's lectures, when he got to 7th chapter, text 1 of the Bhagavad Gita, he gave at least 10, 15 lectures on that one verse. Wherever he went, he was traveling around India and other places, and he would, it's an important verse. Yes, there was another one that he did quite a few of, Rishabhde's, but not as many as that. So why is that? Because he saw the universality of it, being Maya Asakta Manaparta, Yogam Yunjanjadashyam. Asakta means attached. So what happened is that's the first verse of the 7th chapter, and remember the 6th chapter, it was all about dhyana yoga. Right, the official yoga principles: go alone to a lonely place, sacred place, sit on this kind of seat and everything, back straight, eyes between the eyebrows. It's very technical in one sense. Now, there's a point there where he describes it, the benefit, the samadhi. You'll enjoy unlimited happiness through transcendental senses. When you get this, Prabhupada would quote this verse, you'll feel there's no other greater gain, and there'll be no miseries anymore. So it's very nice. We should aspire for that. That's bhakti, because he's thinking of Krishna in the heart. But it's practically impossible for us today. And Arjuna refuses it famously. I can't. Chanchala Mimana Krishna. My mind is like a hurricane. I can't control it. It's possible. I can't see it. So Krishna, yes, you can do it with practice. So I said, okay. But what if I fail? Won't I be like a riven cloud? I gave up. I went to the Himalayas and I failed. So Krishna says, no, you'll be reborn, Srimad Bhagavatam, in a wealthy but pious family, or maybe a family of yogis, But Arjuna wasn't very enlivened by it, so Krishna says, okay. Yogi nama visarvesham madgaten antarapala shraddha bhambhajate yomam samayukta tamamata. Last verse of chapter 6. And he says, the greatest yogi is one who is always thinking in his heart of me, is worshiping me with great and transcendental faith. That's my opinion, that there's a yoga. So I breathed a huge sigh of relief, said, I'm already always thinking of you. He's an eternal associate in friendship. So the very next verse, which is that first verse of the 7th chapter, is the one that Prabhupada spoke on. And it begins with this, Maya Asakta Manaparta. Now I'm going to show you how your mind without all of this technicalities of the yoga system, but in everyday life even, you can make your mind more and more attracted to me. Maya, which is the goal. Maya yogam yunjan vanashriya. By practicing this yoga, bhakti yoga. Asankshayam samagram mam. Without a doubt, and you'll come to know me in full. Just hear. The Shunu, that word Shunu, Prabhupada picks up on, just hear me. So those who take shelter of me, says Krishna, or those who take shelter of someone who's taken shelter of Krishna, a pure devotee. Then you can, and then it's this is the first of the middle 6 chapters of the Gita, which Prabhupada said are the essence. And it's all about bhakti. You find so many important verses. I'm not going to get into the 7th chapter now in detail. But that's the whole key of how we, and that's when you think about it and you analyze how bhakti works, we're simply cultivating our attraction for Krishna more and more. What are we not supposed to do? Mess around with those things that we're already attracted to on the material side. We have to cut those off, right? And that sometimes is painful. I like to this, I like to see this, read this, talk to this person. No, that'll just make you more attracted to Maya. That's your old habits. You have to give those up and cultivate attraction to Krishna, beginning with the chanting of the holy name. The chanting of the holy name, because it's Krishna, is all attractive. When we focus on it, the main thing is the attention. When you focus on it, you actually hear the holy name, and you're not doing all those things that are distracting your mind, and that you're giving those up. Then you can actually feel more and more enlivened in devotional service. And the wonderful thing about it is everything becomes more attractive. The association, the deities, the reading, you're enthralled by reading from Prabhupada's books, because it's confirming and what you've already are feeling, and it's giving you so much faith by your intelligence, strengthening your intelligence. Intelligence is key, because the intelligence is where you put your attention. It's deciding what the mind is supposed to be, what the mind focuses attention on. Well, as the mind and senses take over, then the intelligence just becomes victimized. And it said, well, how can we arrange for the senses and mind to be pleased? No. Oh, senses and mind, now stop that, do this, so that you can, by association and by contact with Krishna and everything related to Krishna, you become attached to what's really good for you. And ultimately, by practice, the things that we used to be addicted to is what is that? I'll end with this verse because it's getting late. Yadavadi mamacheta Krishna padada vinde Namanamana sadhaman yudditam rantumasit Tadavadi batanadi sangame smayamane Bhavati mukhavikaru sushtunishtivanangsha. Prabhupada, very delightful the way he said it. I spite on it. I spite on it. That's the way he pronounced spit. No one ever corrected him, obviously. It's just, wonderful. So what's this verse about? This is Yamunacharya. He was the spiritual master of Ramanujacharya. And I won't tell the whole story about, he was great, he was trained, a young, brilliant scholar, devotional scholar. And I'm not going to go into the whole thing, but eventually he became a king. And the kings have all kinds of facility for enjoyment, the harem, whatever you want to call it. So he did that, and he was saved from that, and then he became Yamunacharya. He gave that all up, So he had the experience in that lifetime. So what the verse means is that ever since I have been enjoying ever new transcendental pleasures serving the lotus feet of Krishna. Mamacheta Krishna padada vinde navanavadasa, ever new navanavadasa dhaman yuditam rantumasit. Then whenever these, because your mind will do it comes up, remembrance, unbidden, but it comes up, remembering my association with the women and all of this sex. My lips, twisting in distaste, and I spit at it. I spit at the thought. There's no attraction. It's just like, ooh, how could I have done all that? And remember, there's a purport here where it said we should always remember, as the devotees in the ISKCON movement, where we came from, what we've been saved from. Now that we know, you read the last part of the fifth canto, all that description of the hells. Whoa, well, I'm glad I'm not going there. But we shouldn't feel that we're on the safe side. We should be very eager to practice even more and be very, vigilant not to fall back into that. But the idea is that the attraction of Krishna becomes so strong that you come to the Nishta platform, the Anartas, and the Ruchi increases more and more until that matures into actual attraction for Krishna. Ruchi, Asakti, Bhava, Prema, these higher things. But that Anarta Nivritti, that's in our hand. How seriously we want to practice and become purified, and come to the point of real faith, which is simply defined as Shraddha Shabde Vishwas Kore Suridhanis Joy, Krishna Bhakti Kole Sarvakarma Katahoy. That, okay, we're running out of time. That real faith, Nishta, firm faith, is the complete conviction, unshakable conviction that just by practicing the principles of Krishna consciousness, all of my goals will be achieved. And this is what we're trying to inspire people to do. And by book distribution and by preaching of every kind, to give them a chance to become attracted to Krishna. Okay, I'm going to stop there. I'm sorry, it's kind of late. Any questions, comments? Please.
You were talking about the mudras.
Yes.
Prabhupada was in Calcutta temple, and he went into the temple and this arti going on, and the devotees were standing like this.
Oh my God.
With the hands behind the backside. Not all of them, but many of them. So Prabhupada went behind and was slapping their hands.
Oh, really?
And afterwards he said, this is not how you stand before the deities.
Yeah.
Because the hands are a big part of our devotion.
Yes.
Like you said, we stand like this, or the best is where you got your hands up.
Yeah.
And you mentioned this also. This is like, who are you?
Yeah. What can you show me? It's like,
with your arms
I'm
crossed.
not letting you in.
I'm not letting you in. Yeah, that's a good point. So, our hands say a lot. It's like when there's a fight.
Yeah.
You're my enemy. You got a fist out. That's another, fear mudra.
Yeah, mudras were, and there's a whole art, like everything else, everything in Vedic culture is highly developed, and the dancers know all that, expression, especially. But this mudra, Radharani, don't worry, just chant Hare Krishna, surrender us, serve us, everything will be fine, You're going to hear this, but Maharaj is going to use it in his talks. Who else had something? Go ahead, Govardhan.
Hare Krishna. When you mentioned how the whole crypto collapse and devotees are happy with their coping and devotees, it reminded me of I met a person on book distribution. He would bike everywhere, all around the country.
Wow.
And he said, I saw my charter. He said that reminded me. He was somewhere in Nebraska, and there was like a green, like a prairie. And he saw this salmon color, like cloth, just walking. And he said, what is that? He didn't know if it was a piece of material or a person. So he biked all the way there. And he said it was a Hare Krishna person.
In the middle of the desert?
No, it was like in a grassland or something.
Grassland, okay.
Yeah. And he asked him, what are you doing out here in the middle of nowhere? He said, I'm trying to get to Canada. He said, that's 5,000 miles away. And he said, yeah.
That's in Bhakti Marks. But this was in Canada?
He
said he's trying to get to Canada.
Yeah, Nebraska. And he said, how are we going to get there? He said, well, we depend on Krishna. And he said, what are you going to do for food and shelter? He said, well, there's a lot of nice people that are going to let me in. And he just kept walking, and he was so amazed by that. Like, he had nothing, just his, his clothes and everything.
Yeah, he did that for years. I don't know if he's still doing it. He got the walking Swami, amazing. Yeah, there's some stories on that. PTG too. Saul, you got the mic?
Yeah.
Okay, one last one, and then we'll end.
I just had a question about the Yamadutas.
What is it?
About the Yamadutas. Do they ever give up the service to go back to Godhead, or they're just serving Yamarāja eternally?
I never heard. I don't want to speculate about the Yamadutas. Do you know something?
There's some, I forget. It's in one of the Puranas, but they're jivas, and I'm forgetting the Purana that it's in, but it's stated that Vaishnava Paratis actually become Yamadutas.
Vaishnava Paradis.
Yeah.
Do they ever graduate?
Say again?
Do they ever graduate from being Yamadutas? Is that
Yeah, and then yeah.
Eventually their time is up. Okay.
Like a debt they have to serve out.
Okay.
When
Okay.
it's paid, then
Yeah.
they go on to their next life.
Okay. All right, on that auspicious note, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. Hari Hari. Hare Krishna.